Honest working folk don't have a chance unless we organise. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Tell me, which side are you on?
Let me just say generally on power and electricity in this state that there has been a chronic failure of good public policy in New South Wales from both parties over the last 15 years on this issue. If you go back to 1997, when Bob Carr first proposed this, it was all on the basis that, of course, Victoria had done it. The whole issue of sort of power privatisation was taking off around the developed world, and there was simply a view that there's with dollars to be made, huge dollars to be made, and therefore we should be in the game as well. And that was certainly not the basis, and certainly should not be the basis, on which any decisions are made about the sale of essential services such as power generators or power stations. And if you think about Victoria, everyone wants to go on the conservative side of politics and the economic rationalists and say, well, you know, look at Jeff Kennett and the $25 billion that they made out of their sale, yes, but let's have a look at actually the long-term alleged benefits, and you'll find that that sale has failed the Victorian community at large over that 15-year period. Right now, Hazelwood Station, one of the major stations down there in Victoria in the Moe Valley, that's not the, no, thank you very much, Moe's in the, yes, I got lost in Moe once, it's a long story, which is in the centre of the Latrobe Valley, is of course looking for a massive capital injection to try and continue at the present time. And ultimately, where will that come? It'll fall on the consumer and also the taxpayer. So whilst up front, there was allegedly all these financial gains for the people of Victoria, it hasn't proven to be the case over that 15-year period. Here in New South Wales, we've had several attempts at sale of the power generators, and of course after 1997, and can I say this, at least in regard to Bob Carr and Michael Egan, they put up a proposal. The proposal was debated by the community and also by the Labor Party at the time, and was soundly defeated, and therefore they did what good leaders should do and said, okay, we'll leave it at that, and walked away from it. But of course, back in 2008, then it came back on the agenda again. And I don't think I've ever seen such an appalling, and we're all involved in it, including myself, you know, an appalling way that that whole issue was handled in terms of the proposals to sell the electricity generators back in 2008. And so we go on. So then we don't have a sale in 2008, but there's a Premier who loses his job and all the other machinations that took place then. We get to 2010, and the government comes up with the idea of selling not the power stations themselves, but the rights to trade the power that is generated by those stations. And that ends up in people resigning from boards, Parliament being prorogued, and it was just an absolute circus. And then of course we come back now to 2012, and what do we find? There's one last sting in the tail, that the new government says that we will sell these power stations because they have to allegedly fix up the mess of the previous government. But then the sale takes place, or sorry, the legislation passes for allowing the sale to take place. But what do we find? On the basis, and how these two, aside from the politics, but how you would ever link these two, that also we can have shooting in national parks. Now, if that ever summed up the whole miserable debate about electricity power stations and sales and the future of them in this state, the final twist in the tail was the power stations of this state, A, are going to be sold, but B, were also as a consequence going to allow shooting in national parks. Shows what a total failure of good public policy making it has been when we've debated this issue every time over the last 15 years.